Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
We all know that our health is important. No debate on that. But a lot of times we don't think about the fact that our mental health is included in that. And that's what we're going to talk about today, the foundation for your well-being, which also includes your emotional health. And she knows all about that. She's a spiritual life coach, a hypnotherapist, does these amazing retreats in Sedona, Arizona. Talk about taking care of your mental health. That would be it. And she's back with us, Rhea Maceris, on the program. Rhea, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm pleased to be here, Steve. Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. And isn't it funny? Like if you look back, 10, 15 years and you said those two words, mental health, right away in somebody's mind, bells and whistles go off. I don't know, they're a little off kilter there, but thankfully it's changed the perception of those two words, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And even the idea of hearing voices or hearing someone speaking to you, we were locked away for that. And now we're open to hear the guidance and the support from within. So that entire arena is changing, as you mentioned. And I'm thankful that we're open to look at it and speak about it. Finally.
Yeah, and I guess this is proof of it. I was on just scrolling on Facebook, just a group that I belong to, and somebody started a dialogue about how women kind of bash guys from time to time. Guys are so typical, blah, 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 blah. And people came back and said, it's not just guys, it's also women. And then one guy, and I know him not really well, but he wrote, you know what? I'm working on myself, as is everybody else, and I've discovered mindfulness, and it's been so impactful. And just even seeing even a guy talk about stuff like that, it was like, oh, okay. Now we're taking notice. Now we're taking notice that there are things that we need to work on.
And interesting you mentioned that, because I'm noticing that as well. Many more men are surrendering, if you will, or having the courage to admit that they want some help.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to cross that street, so to speak, is a beautiful piece. And like when I started this work 20 some years ago, it was mainly women who were going through empty nest. That was the general arena of people that were attracted to this type of work. And now, like I mentioned, it's bringing in couples and men and even young men that are owning. If they're spending time on their computers all day, they're lonely. They want to have more connection. So even addressing that piece helps your mental stability and your mental health for sure.
Can't believe you said that, because somebody told me this yesterday and I didn't Google it yet, but essentially there's an epidemic or it's funny, I said the word Google and my phone pinged. Listening. Good, look it up right now.
Unlock your device.
All right. Well, thank you very much there. That there's an epidemic of loneliness right now.
With young men. That might have been the same one that I heard.
Wow.
It might be across the board, but the one I heard was particularly with young men. And it affected me because I have a 22-year-old, and that's something he has addressed and spoken about. There is an element of truth to it.
Who would ever think? And here it is, U.S. Surgeon. That's who it was. The U.S. Surgeon General issues loneliness advisory, calling it an epidemic, and warns that it's hurting U.S. health. Wow. And who would ever think what you just said there, that it's young men? You would think that they're out, having great time with their friends and living life and everything. You would think maybe it's older Americans, but wow. I'm kind of shocked. I really am.
And so even given that, the nature of that and how that affects their mental health, because as human beings, we need connection. We need to feel understood and seen and heard, and all the elements that come with the social aspect. So to bring that back to the work that I do with people, I kind of look at it as we teach others how to treat us by how we treat ourselves. And what I mean by that is, for what, and this is one of the big questions that I find myself asking often, is why are we so critical and judgmental of ourselves and in the humanness, right? And so that's a big part of the work that I do with people, is first of all recognizing it and realizing they can change that. Because oftentimes, especially people that have had a challenging childhood, their natural tendency, and we've talked a little bit about this, is to go out and try to control situations and people around them rather than bringing that inward. So what I help them with is, first of all, recognizing that, coming back in here and finding kindness. And I know self-love is a cliche that's being thrown around, and it's so important that they're being kind and considerate and loving of themselves. So that's a big part of what I teach. It's a big part of how I choose to live, and it's a day-by-day choice. I'm not by any means saying I have it perfected, but it is my intention each day to be kind and loving to myself, because that is a higher vibrational feeling, a higher vibrational energy, to put it in the context of energy.
And how we speak to ourselves, either internally or when nobody's around, in front of the mirror, we would never speak to somebody the same way that we love or we care about. If you
Exactly.
verbalize what you think about yourself when you pass by the mirror every day, like, look at that, you jerk, look, oh, that you look horrible. You would never say that to somebody you truly care about. So it is so true. And by
Yes.
the way, the word kind, uh, there was a study recently done. What do women want in a guy? They don't want a nice guy. They want a kind man.
Ooh, big difference. Ooh,
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
How
How
did
do
you,
you
how did you
define?
interpret that for as a man?
Um, Somebody who treats people with respect,
Mm-hmm.
somebody who takes somebody's feelings into account,
Yes.
somebody who does the right thing. There's lots of nice guys out there, um, but sometimes they may be doing things that aren't genuine. They're just trying to be nice. Kind is you're kind. If you're kind to somebody, it's genuine. It is, and it's so funny. I do a radio show every day, mostly music intensive. You know what the last thing I say
Be kind
to each other?
to each other
Yeah,
and to yourself.
and to
Yes.
myself. Well, we forget that part. Yeah. Uh,
Yes.
how can you be kind to yourself?
That's a great question. And that's part of what I open up their eye. It's almost like a new way of looking at themselves, first of all, and just even having the courage to recognize how they're speaking to themselves. So it's kind of like looking at it as, speak to yourself like you would mentor someone else.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, you would not say that to, you mentioned your children, you have children, you would not say that to your friends, you would not speak any of the, and so that, I mean, it really is an irony when you stop and think about it. Why would we talk to ourselves like that? So when we're speaking to ourselves in negative terms, with negative, you're stupid, you're ugly, whatever it is, generally that's something that we heard as a child. And so I bring the awareness to that. And
Mm,
so then I literally teach them how to stop it in their tracks, nope, and go positive. I'm so grateful. I'm focusing on being kind to myself. Literally becoming aware of those negative thoughts before they go into the negative feelings. Because once they're in the negative feelings, guess what? Then we're dealing with the emotions that aren't happy, that aren't healthy, going back to our initial beginning of looking at mental health, right?
I love what you just said. Stop it in its tracks because I've reframed the way I react to things in my journey in the last year or two. And if I'm driving and somebody cuts me off, like anybody else previously, I'd be like, "Ah, and now it's just like I may have a flick of a second of that, like that. And I was like, yeah, the brakes mentally, maybe on the car as well if you need to, and
Yeah.
just stop. Nothing happened. They may be going through a bad time. got a bad phone call, didn't get any sleep, working 5 jobs, whatever it might be. And the same thing too is how many times do we do this? You're scrolling social media, you see, somebody did something, maybe you're a little jealous. Look at them doing that again. Wow, look at that. You're mentally thinking these things. You don't even know you're doing it. Just scrolling. Well, what about if you just take that and reverse it and say, good for them. Oh, they got a new car. Now, maybe it's somebody that, is always doing well and you're a little jealous. And it's like, just, wow, that's great. You're sending a positive vibe in that direction and also within yourself as well. I think we just get so used to maybe the negativity train where you just don't even know you're doing it after a while.
Exactly. And that's why your awareness is so important in the process.
Yeah.
Instead of what's everybody else doing or what are they thinking or feeling, coming back into you and bringing your awareness to, because your thoughts matter, your feelings matter. And guess what? When you're hanging out negativity in your body, dis-ease.
Yeah. You're just bringing it on yourself. And when you say thoughts matter, a lot of times we think that, meaning like your opinion matters. Of course it does. Your thought matters to me. But what we're really talking about here, or as well, is that the thought matters to you. Even if it's a thought about another person, you internalize
Yes.
the thought.
Yes.
We don't realize the impact of that. We just think it's a passing thought.
And it's being willing to look at the judge that we all have within us, which basically comes in when we're a child to protect us.
Mm-hmm.
And so recognizing it and then shifting it, and that's a process that we've referred to, the concept of neuroplasticity. This is basically the process that I teach them how to shift to go positive. And Steve, I can still remember the first day when I literally woke up and I went to gratitude instead of fear or dread, which was my constant go-to, being a victim as a child. I wrote a whole book about it, by the way. But anyway, when I finally woke up and went to gratitude, I thought, wow, this really works. And it does. But it's making that commitment to yourself, loving yourself enough, being kind enough to yourself to realize, I want to feel good. Ultimately, it's inviting inner peace, right? Which is what we all want, it's to some extent.
Well, I call this emotional buckets. And if your bucket is full with garbage of negativity and things within, you can't welcome the inner peace. There's no room. It's the same thing. You just got out of a bad relationship. Maybe it was one that was 20 years and it ended, whatever it may be. Yes, it's horrible. I get it. Maybe somebody did whatever it might be. You're not going to open the door for somebody else because you're still dealing with that. You got to push that away, move past it, find the inner peace. Now you can welcome anything else. And I know it's a cliche. When one door closes, the other one opens. You got to close the door first, and you have to be aware and mindfully close
Yeah.
it on whatever it might be.
Well, and even I like how you refer to the emotional bucket, because imagine you're literally carrying around a bucket of toxicity and it gets heavier and heavier. I mean, I've even wondered, I don't know if there's any truth to this, but I've wondered if, like, when older people, like, they're really hunched over and that's how they're beginning to walk, if they're literally carrying around those emotional buckets for so long that their body is shifting from carrying that weight.
I don't doubt it. And my latest one, what I say, and it just reminded me. It ties into what you just said. Move from the bucket. I call it the emotional backpack. You're carrying it with you, and there you go. If somebody, an older person, is hunched over, they may have been carrying all that stuff. Unzip it and take it out. That's the hard part, though. How do we unzip the emotional backpack and get that stuff out of there so we can put good stuff in there?
Well, that's where the hypnotherapy comes into play.
Yeah.
Is being able to go into the old beliefs, recognizing them. Recognizing them, I believe, is a large part of the shifting, because if we don't recognize the quote ugly that we want to change, how can we change it? So it's recognizing it and then being willing to change it. And the reason that I wanted to talk about emotional wellness today as well is because we started talking about manifesting last week. And I believe that when we're more emotionally balanced, that's when we can easily create and manifest our dreams. Because part of the process is letting go of the past. We can't change the past, but we can look at it differently. We can look at it through the eyes of, okay, that happened. That's what's brought me to who I am now. And when I'm in the present moment, it's easier to manifest. Does that make sense?
Crystal clear over here. Yeah. And the same thing too, when there's things that you want to let go of the past. And most times it involves somebody else, situations that
Yes.
other people.
Yes.
Maybe it's me, but I found it's been pretty impactful to realize that they probably didn't intend to be who they were or what they did, i.e., a jerk, maybe, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
They didn't heal. They have things that they're dealing with that they don't even know they're dealing with. And that's why they probably did what they did. More times than not, somebody doesn't say, I'm just going to blank them over. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. It probably came from another place, something from their childhood. They're dealing
Absolutely.
with. And I'm not cutting anybody slack here, but think about a lot of criminals who were in prison. Why did they do what they did? Maybe people say it could be genetics or whatever, but what if it was the way they were brought up and what they experienced and the trauma they had as a 5, 7, 8 year old, and that put them on their course? Not good, but it is what it is, and they're paying their penalty and all of that. But when I look at it that way, in terms of somebody doing something wrong, I feel a little bit better because it wasn't really directed at me or somebody else, that's dealing with that. Does that sound reasonable?
That's your understanding nature.
It took me a long time to find that.
Well, you're there.
But I guess it's comforting in some ways to realize that people don't always intentionally want to hurt other people. They just have problems, issues like the
Well,
rest.
and correlating it to the emotional well-being, they're probably hurting inside, and that when people are hurting, they hurt each other until again, we bring in the awareness.
Hmm.
Hurt people hurt other people. That's sadly the way it is. And
Yeah.
so again, bringing in the awareness, how am I talking to myself? Am I being unkind to myself? Am I being judgmental? Then I'm not going to be feeling good. So guess what? That's what I bring to the podcast if I'm not feeling good. So it's a it's a
Vibration,
it's a mature choice that takes courage.
isn't it the vibration that you bring to it?
Yes.
No, and your intent. If you intend to have a crappy day, guess what? Pretty good chance you're going to have one. And
Right.
what
Right.
what's unfortunate, just reflecting back on what we just said a second ago, for those people that do things that aren't right, hurt other people, unfortunately, you can't say you really need to heal from that. Even if you see it, like, all right, your parents got divorced when you were younger. You have, maybe father issues. It's pretty clear over here that what we're looking at, usually you can't tell somebody that they're not going to listen unless they're ready.
Exactly. Exactly. Because if they're the last thing they want to hear is another judgment because they're already judging themselves. So that's like stacking another negative thought onto where they already are.
Point
And
taken.
even though they're doing it to themselves, that's the irony of it, right? They're doing it to themselves, but don't you dare talk to me like that. We are interesting creatures.
But that, if you've been hurt by somebody else, that's actually kind of comforting too, to say to yourself, they're probably judging themselves internally. They may be walking around, hey, everything's great. Yeah, I moved on from that, and they're gone. But they probably are dealing with something internally, wrestling with something, on their mind. You'll never see it. You'll never know it.
Well, and it reminds me of this. I heard a radical definition of forgiveness that I really like. And the definition is imagine it never happened. There's some freedom to that, right?
Hmm.
Imagine that, really. It's letting it go. I mean, because if you're holding resentment and judgment towards not just you, but anyone, then we're letting them rent free in our head.
Oh yeah. Interesting.
So imagine it never happened. And
Empower.
it takes, it takes, and that's part of what I would say that I help and guide them to realize that that can happen. As they're being kinder to themselves, guess what? They want to keep being kinder to themselves. And part of being kinder to yourself is forgiving, because otherwise we're carrying that anxiety and that judgment and that resentment within us.
Ring the bell. Ring the Rhea bell. Yeah. I'm trying to put it into different situations. Imagine it never happened. So let's say you were released from a job, you got fired. And, really, you're angry, no warning, they just let you go. You're, it's on you. Well, if you imagine it never happened, what I mean by that in this instance is imagine that they didn't fire you, you just left the job. Now you're going on to another one, or you're searching for another one. We all just leave jobs. There's one, there's been times, I walked away from a job, 10 years. You know what? Not serving me anymore. The employer, the manager was like, "What? You're leaving?" Like, yeah, leaving. If you think it in those terms, same thing. Somebody does something in a relationship. Yeah, it's horrible. Okay. Imagine it never happened. You're not forgetting about the person. You're not forgetting about all the good times. You're not forgetting about the kids. You're not forgetting about all of that. You just moved on. I'm on to something else now. Imagine it never happened. I think that's really good.
And then you're, like we were talking about earlier, as that job is shifting away, you're making more space for ideally yet a better position or a better career path that speaks more maybe to your spiritual, to your kindness, or the parts you really want to express.
Yes.
So even having a trust when things happen.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yes. Imagine that.
Yeah. But it's, in just a few words, like 4 words can help you release it. I'm not saying it's always going to be that easy. I'm not saying that's the answer to everything. But again, it's what we're talking about. If you're mindful of it, if you're aware of it, and you're at the point, maybe you need to get to the point where you can just say, yeah, imagine that never happened. All right, I'm pivoting over here now. It's all good. That's why you do what you do. You know what? In the couple of minutes we have left, let's talk about the retreats that you do in Sedona.
Sure. Yes. So I do 3 and 4 day retreats, personal retreats, one-on-one, which granted, there are a lot of retreat companies in Sedona for sure. However, where I'm unique is that I am your personal guide throughout the experience. Like some of the retreats you meet with 4 or 5 or 6, sometimes 7 different practitioners. So you're going into each of these sessions, and there's beauty in that. I'm not in any way downplaying that. However, with my type of situation, I'm going to be meeting with you so we can go deeper and deeper, and you don't have to keep repeating your story with each of the different practitioners. So that's a difference that I offer. We do journeys on the land. I bring in creativity. I'm a strong advocate of creativity. I think our soul speaks through our creativity, and I like to help them find that part of themselves instead of it has to be perfect or has to be beautiful, which it can be, but it's more allowing an expression. I do inner child work. And so it's very personalized. Like if you would call me up, we would talk and I would personalize those 3 or 4 days for you and then let the show begin. And then I also do the virtual retreats, but that's the other aspect.
The in-person Sedona retreats, where is somebody staying?
That's ultimately up to them. I mean, I have some friends that have Airbnbs that I offer if they're available.
Gotcha.
But they can stay in obviously another Airbnb or hotels, motels. Cottonwood is close. It's ultimately up to them where they want to stay. Yeah.
It's very tempting. Rhea, I'm here. I'm going to meditate for a day. I'll get back to you because just being in that atmosphere of Sedona, just beautiful. Just taking on the scenery. But the best part is it's always nice to travel somewhere where you have somebody that can help you out. Like my son wanted to go to Japan. He's 17, has an affinity for.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and we're talking about it. We're working on it.
Is
Thing
he
is,
going to go by himself?
no, with me.
Oh, he wants you to go with him.
Yeah, I
Ooh,
know nothing about it.
what do you think?
He is really plugged into the culture and everything, but I don't know anybody in Japan. It's not like I could say, "Hey, we just arrived. Where do we go to eat? What do we do?" For Sedona, you can direct. I want to go on a hike. After our session. Let's say we have a
Yeah, you can have a guide. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because you know the lay of the land, you know the area. I want to go to a nice Italian restaurant. Oh, okay. Steve, go to this place. It doesn't look like you want to go there from the outside. Best food,
Right.
authentic, all of that kind of stuff. But that's what makes it special. And also you reach some goals, I'm sure, once you leave.
Well, I have a Japanese word for you if you like.
Go.
Tomodachi.
Say it again.
Tomodachi. It means friend.
Wasn't
Tomodachi.
wasn't there little video games called Tamagotchis?
I don't know.
There
I'm
was.
not, I don't have access to that world as much.
I'm good. I think it's going back like 15, 20, even more than that. I want to say almost 30 years
Maybe.
ago.
Yeah,
And
maybe.
it was called the Tamagotchi, but now it makes perfect sense because it was a little electronic device almost the size of a beeper with a little LCD old school screen. And I guess that was your Tamagotchi was your friend. Oh, thank you. I have another word for that trip to Japan. Expensive. I think that maybe that's universal. I don't know. But
But you love manifesting, so there you go.
yeah, well, I got to start manifesting that.
We can talk about that.
Absolutely. And thanks for being my Tamagotchi.
Yes, absolutely. It's a pleasure.
How do we find you online?
You can go to my website at imaginegetaways.com. There's a discover button. If you want to click that, it'll take you to a calendar, set up a time, and I will. There's a free consultation call. I'd be happy to talk with you about.
Very interesting. Very interesting. You just put that on my radar even more. I thought about it last time, but now like it all just seems, when you visualize what that's like, you're working on yourself, you're getting some time away, beautiful scenery. It's a win.
Get a Tomodachi.
and you have a Sedona Tamagotchi when they get there in you. Rhea, always great talking with you. I really appreciate you.
Same.
All right. We'll talk next time. Thanks a lot.
Have a wonderful week. Bye, Steve.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.